The gap between people who are building real wealth right now and people who are slowly falling behind, it's not growing gradually anymore, it's accelerating, and the uncomfortable part is that most people who are falling behind genuinely believe they're doing everything right. And I want to be clear from the start. This isn't about blaming anyone. It's not a political video. It's not doom scrolling dressed up as financial advice. This is about understanding a shift that's happening in real time, why it's moving faster than most people expect. And here's the part that actually matters, where the opportunities inside that shift are sitting completely in the open, waiting for people who are paying attention. Because here's the thing, every major economic transition in history has created a new class of wealthy people, every single one. The question is never whether opportunity exists, the question is whether you're positioned to see it. So let's talk about what's actually happening. The first thing you need to understand is that traditional financial milestones, the ones your parents told you about, the ones society still treats as the gold standard, they're not delivering the same results anymore. Getting a stable job, putting money in a savings account, maybe buying a home, slowly paying it off over 30 years. That model worked brilliantly for several decades, and for a lot of people it still partially works. But as a complete wealth-building strategy in today's environment, it has serious cracks in it. And honestly, this surprised me when I first started mapping it out clearly. The average savings account in most developed countries is paying interest that doesn't even keep pace with real-world inflation. That means every single month, the purchasing power of that saved money is quietly shrinking. People feel financially responsible because they're saving. And technically they are, but the math is working against them in a way that's almost invisible until years go by, and they realize their money feels like it should go further than it does. Now here's what gets interesting. And this is where the wealth gap widens in a way that isn't obvious at first glance. While savings accounts erode purchasing power slowly, assets have been doing something completely different. Global equity markets, real estate in most major cities, private businesses, intellectual property, digital assets, these have been appreciating at rates that savings accounts could never touch. And the people who own those assets, even in small amounts, have been compounding their wealth passively. The people who don't own them have been working harder just to stay in place. That's not a coincidence. That's the structure of modern wealth accumulation. And understanding that structure is genuinely more valuable than any specific investment tip anyone could ever give you. But wait, because here's where it gets more nuanced, and this is the part most financial content completely glosses over. It's not just asset ownership that's separating people anymore. It's assets, and those assets generate returns. Because something new entered the equation recently. And it's sort of moving with a speed that the financial world is still catching up to. Artificial intelligence is restructuring the economics of skill, labor, and business ownership in a way we haven't seen since the internet arrived. And just like the internet, the people who understand it early and position themselves around it aren't necessarily the people with the most money to invest. They're the people who are paying attention. Think about what AI is doing to the cost of running certain types of businesses. Tasks that used to require teams, content creation, customer service, data analysis, coding, legal drafting, marketing, are now either being automated or dramatically accelerated. That means the barrier to building and scaling lean, profitable businesses just dropped significantly. A single person with the right tools and knowledge can now generate the output that would have required a team 5 years ago. The scary part is, most people are treating AI as a curiosity rather than a wealth-building lever. They're watching demos on social media and moving on. Meanwhile, a relatively small number of people are quietly using these tools to build income streams, cut operational costs, and compound their financial position faster than any previous generation could. And this matters because we're still early. The learning curve hasn't fully flattened yet. There's still a real window. Now let me bring this back to something more personal for a second. Because I think the deeper issue here isn't really about AI or savings rates or asset allocation. The deeper issue is about how most people make financial decisions, and specifically, what they're responding to when they make them. Most people are reactive in their financial lives. Something happens, inflation rises, markets drop, a job feels less secure, and they respond emotionally. They pull back on investing, they hoard cash, they delay decisions that actually need to be made. And that reactive posture almost always costs them more than the thing they were reacting to. The people who consistently build wealth aren't emotionally cold, they're not robots, but they've built a decision-making process that creates a buffer between what's happening and how they respond to it. They ask different questions when markets get volatile. Not, should I sell? But is my long-term thesis still intact? Not, is the economy scary right now? But what does this environment mean for the positioning I need to be in 3 years from now? That mental shift, from reactive to strategic, is probably the single biggest differentiator between people who build wealth and people who perpetually feel like they're one step behind. Here's the part nobody talks about enough though. Building that kind of strategic mindset isn't just about consuming more financial content, it's about creating constraints that force better behavior, automating investments before you spend, setting rules for when you will and won't touch certain accounts, removing friction from good financial habits and adding friction to bad ones. These aren't revolutionary ideas, but the people who actually implement them, even imperfectly, dramatically outperform the people who understand them intellectually but never act. And this is where things change in terms of what you can actually do starting right now. You don't need a windfall. You don't need a perfect market environment. You don't need to have started 10 years ago, even though yes, 10 years ago would have been great. What you need is a clear picture of where you currently stand, a small number of high-leverage moves, and the discipline to repeat them long enough for compounding to do the heavy work. That might look like redirecting even a modest monthly amount into a broad market index fund and simply never stopping. It might mean spending 90 days genuinely learning one AI tool deeply enough to either use it in a business or offer it as a service. It might mean restructuring how you think about income, moving from I trade time for money to I'm building at least one thing that generates value without requiring my direct hours. None of these are dramatic. None of them require you to quit your job tomorrow or take reckless financial risks. But every single one of them is a step away from the reactive financial posture that keeps most people stuck, and a step toward the strategic posture that compounds over time. The wealth gap is real, it's widening, and the forces driving it aren't slowing down, but the same forces creating that gap are also creating extraordinary opportunities for anyone who's willing to understand them clearly and position accordingly. Almost nobody who's building serious wealth right now started from a position of advantage. Most started from exactly where you are, probably overwhelmed, probably not sure where to start, probably consuming content like this hoping something clicks. The difference is they eventually stopped waiting for perfect clarity and started making small, consistent, strategic moves. You don't need to have it all figured out, you just need to start being intentional. If this video made you think differently about where you're positioned right now, subscribe, because this is the kind of conversation we have every week here at Wealth Minds Hub, and I'm genuinely curious, what's the one financial habit you think is holding most people back? Drop it in the comments. The answers there are always more interesting than you'd expect.